The blood from her split lip tasted like copper and shame as Gwendolyn James stumbled away from the town square, the laughter of the women still ringing in her ears like church bells announcing her humiliation. Her copper-red hair had come loose from its careful bun during the scuffle, cascading down her back in waves that caught the harsh afternoon sun of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and the freckles across her nose and cheeks seemed to burn hotter than the July heat of 1878. She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth, fighting tears that would only give those cruel women more satisfaction, and hurried toward the edge of town, where the respectable buildings gave way to rough timber structures, and the kind of places her aunt had warned her never to enter. Gwendolyn had arrived in Eureka Springs 3 months ago with such hope, traveling all the way from St. Louis after her parents had died of fever within days of each other. Her mother's sister, Aunt Margaret, had written promising work at her boarding house and a fresh start in the growing town that was becoming known for its healing springs. What her aunt had failed to mention was that Eureka Springs society, such as it was, had very particular ideas about beauty, and Gwendolyn's red hair and freckled skin marked her as something less than desirable in their eyes. The town's leading ladies, wives of merchants and landowners, had made it clear from her first Sunday at church that she did not meet their standards. Today, when she had accidentally bumped into Mrs. Catherine Thornhill outside the general store, spilling the woman's packages, the dam of polite cruelty had finally burst. Mrs. Thornhill had called her a clumsy spotted mule. Her companions had laughed and added their own observations about circus freaks and Irish tinkers, though Gwendolyn's family had been in America for 3 generations. When Gwendolyn had tried to apologize and help gather the fallen packages, one of the younger women had pushed her away hard enough to make her stumble and fall, cutting her lip on her own teeth. The constable had been standing right there, watching, and had done nothing. Now Gwendolyn found herself in an unfamiliar part of town, her vision blurred with tears she could no longer hold back. She ducked into an alley between a saloon and what looked like a livery stable, pressing her back against the rough wooden wall and finally letting herself cry. Great, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. She had endured months of whispered insults and deliberate slights, but the physical violence had broken something inside her. She felt utterly alone in the world, marked by features she had not chosen and could not change, judged unworthy by people who did not know her heart. "Miss, are you hurt?" The voice was male, deep and gentle, with a drawl that spoke of Texas or perhaps further south. Gwendolyn's head snapped up, and through her tears she saw a man standing at the mouth of the alley. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in worn denim pants and a faded blue shirt with a bandana around his neck. His hat was pushed back on his head, revealing dark hair and a face that was weathered by sun and wind but handsome in a rugged way. He held his hands slightly away from his sides, as if to show he meant no threat, and his dark eyes were full of concern. "I am fine," Gwendolyn said automatically, wiping at her face with shaking hands. "Please just leave me be." "You are bleeding," the man said, not moving closer but not leaving either. "And you have been crying. I know it is not my business, but I cannot walk away from someone in distress." "Why not?" The words came out sharper than she intended, bitter with pain. "Everyone else in this town manages it just fine." The man was quiet for a moment, and Gwendolyn expected him to take her advice and leave. Instead, he pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and held it out, still keeping his distance. "My name is Owen Young. I am a cowhand, just passing through with a cattle drive. We stopped to rest the herd and replenish supplies. I do not know what happened to you, but I know cruelty when I see its aftermath." Something in his voice made Gwendolyn look at him more carefully. He was perhaps 25 or 26, not much older than her own 21 years, and there was a kindness in his face that seemed genuine. Slowly, she reached out and took the handkerchief, dabbing at her lip. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but the cloth came away stained with red. "Thank you," she said quietly. "May I come a bit closer?" Owen asked. "I promise I mean you no harm. I just want to make sure you are all right." Gwendolyn nodded, and he approached slowly, like someone approaching a frightened horse. When he was a few feet away, he stopped and crouched down so he was not looming over her. In the shade of the alley, away from the harsh sunlight, Gwendolyn could see his face more clearly. He had strong features, a straight nose, and eyes that were almost black. There was a scar along his jawline, pale against his tanned skin. "What happened?" he asked softly. "I am clumsy," Gwendolyn said, the lie automatic. "I fell." "With respect, miss, that is not true." Owen's voice was still gentle. "I saw those women outside the general store. I saw what they did to you." Fresh tears spilled down Gwendolyn's cheeks. "Then you saw what I am, what they think of me. A freak, too ugly to be treated with basic human decency." "No." The word was sharp, almost angry, and Gwendolyn flinched. Owen's expression immediately softened. "I apologize. I did not mean to startle you, but I cannot let you believe such lies about yourself." "Lies?" Gwendolyn laughed, but it was a broken sound. "Have you looked at me? I am covered in spots like some diseased animal. My hair is the color of rust. I am everything that is considered undesirable in a woman." Owen was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with an intensity that made Gwendolyn want to look away. Then he said, "You look like sunrise." Gwendolyn blinked, certain she had misheard. "What?" "Your hair," Owen said, his voice soft with wonder. "It is the color of sunrise when the sun first breaks over the horizon and turns everything gold and copper and flame. And your freckles are like the stars, still visible in the early morning sky. I have spent half my life sleeping under the stars, driving cattle from Texas to Kansas and everywhere in between, and I have seen 1,000 sunrises. You remind me of the most beautiful ones." For a moment, Gwendolyn could not breathe. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever looked at her the way this stranger was looking at her now, as if she were something precious and rare. She searched his face for signs of mockery, for the cruel joke that must be coming, but found only sincerity. "You do not mean that," she whispered. "I do not say things I do not mean," Owen replied. "It is a fault of mine, according to some. I am too blunt, too honest. But I will not lie to you, miss. You are beautiful." Gwendolyn's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Gwendolyn," she said. "My name is Gwendolyn James." "Miss James," Owen said, and the way he said her name made something warm unfurl in her chest. "Will you let me help you? Is there somewhere I can escort you? Someone who should know you were hurt?" "My aunt's boarding house," Gwendolyn said. "But I cannot go back there like this. She will want to know what happened, and I cannot tell her. She has been kind enough to take me in. I do not want her to worry." "Then let us get you cleaned up first," Owen said. He stood and offered her his hand. Gwendolyn hesitated only a moment before taking it. His hand was calloused and strong, and he pulled her to her feet with easy strength. "There is a water pump behind the livery. It is quiet there. You can wash your face and compose yourself." Gwendolyn let him lead her out of the alley and around the livery stable to a small yard where a water pump stood next to a trough. The area was deserted, and the sound of the main street seemed far away. Owen worked the pump handle until cold, clear water gushed out, and Gwendolyn cupped her hands under the flow, splashing her face. The cold was shocking and helped clear her head. She used Owen's handkerchief to gently clean the blood from her lip and the tear tracks from her cheeks. "Better." Owen asked when she had finished. Yes, thank you. Gwendolyn looked down at the handkerchief, now stained with blood and dirt. I have ruined this. It will wash, Owen said with a small smile. Keep it. They stood there in the quiet yard, and Gwendolyn realized she did not want to leave. This moment with this kind stranger who had said she looked like sunrise felt like a refuge from the cruelty of the world. But she knew it could not last. I should go, she said reluctantly. May I walk with you? Owen asked. Just to make sure you get home safely. Gwendolyn knew she should say no. A young woman did not walk through town with a strange man, no matter how kind he seemed. It would give the gossips even more ammunition. But she found herself nodding anyway. They walked through the back streets, avoiding the main square where the women might still be gathered. Owen kept a respectful distance, not touching her but staying close enough that his presence felt protective. He told her about the cattle drive, about the 200 head of cattle they were moving from Texas to a ranch in Missouri. He had been working as a cowboy since he was 16, he said, after his family's farm in Georgia had been destroyed during the war. That was a long time ago, he said. I do not talk about it much, but the life of a cowboy suits me. I like the open spaces, the freedom. The loneliness can be hard sometimes, but it is better than being trapped in one place. You ever want to settle down? Gwendolyn asked. Owen was quiet for a moment. I used to think I did not. That I was not made for staying in one place, building a home. But lately, I have been wondering if maybe I was just waiting for a reason to stop moving. There was something in his tone that made Gwendolyn's breath catch, but before she could respond, they had reached her aunt's boarding house. It was a large, two-story building that had once been a family home, now converted to house the overflow of visitors who came to Eureka Springs seeking the healing waters. This is where I stay, Gwendolyn said, stopping at the gate. Thank you, Mr. Young, for your kindness. I will not forget it. Owen, he said. Please, just Owen. He hesitated, then added, How long will you be in Eureka Springs? I live here, Gwendolyn said. I work for my aunt, helping run the boarding house. Then I hope I might see you again, Owen said. We will be in town for at least a week, maybe more. The herd needs rest, and so do the men. I would like that, Gwendolyn said softly, surprised by her own boldness. Owen smiled, a real smile that transformed his serious face. Then I will make sure to visit. Good afternoon, Miss James. Good afternoon, Owen. She watched him walk away, his long stride eating up the distance, and only when he had disappeared around a corner did she finally go inside. Her aunt was in the kitchen, preparing dinner for the boarders, and looked up when Gwendolyn entered. There you are, Aunt Margaret said. I was beginning to worry. Did you finish the shopping? Then her eyes narrowed. What happened to your lip? I tripped, Gwendolyn said quickly. It is nothing. Aunt Margaret did not look convinced, but she did not press. She was a practical woman, widowed young and forced to make her own way in the world. She had learned when to ask questions and when to let things be. Well, be more careful. We have new guests arriving tomorrow, and I need you looking presentable. The rest of the day passed in a blur of chores. Gwendolyn changed linens, swept floors, helped prepare dinner, and served the boarders in the dining room. But her mind kept drifting back to the alley, to Owen Young and the way he had looked at her. You look like sunrise. No one had ever said anything so beautiful to her. That night, lying in her small room under the eaves, Gwendolyn touched her fingers to her freckles and tried to see them the way Owen had described, like stars in an early morning sky. It seemed impossible, but the memory of his words made her feel different. Less like something to be hidden and more like something that might be worth seeing, she told herself not to hope. He was a cowboy, passing through town. He would move on with his herd and forget all about her. But when she finally fell asleep, She dreamed of sunrises and dark eyes full of kindness. The next morning, Gwendolyn was hanging laundry in the yard behind the boarding house when she heard someone call her name. She turned to find Owen standing at the gate, his hat in his hands. "I hope I am not intruding," he said. "I asked around and was told I might find you here." Gwendolyn's heart leaped. "You are not intruding. I am just doing chores." "I was wondering," Owen said, and there was a nervousness in his manner that she found endearing, "if you might have some free time this afternoon. There is a spring north of town that one of the locals told me about. They say it is especially beautiful. I thought perhaps you might like to see it." Gwendolyn glanced back at the house. "I should not. I have work to do." "Please," Owen said. "Just an hour or two. I promise to have you back before anyone misses you. It was foolish. It was improper." But Gwendolyn found herself nodding. "Let me speak to my aunt." Aunt Margaret was surprisingly agreeable when Gwendolyn asked for the afternoon off. "You have been working yourself to the bone," she said. "A few hours to yourself will do you good. Just be back in time to help with supper." Gwendolyn changed into her better dress, a simple green calico that she hoped did not look too shabby, and met Owen at the front gate. He had a horse, a sturdy bay gelding, and he helped her mount before swinging up behind her. Gwendolyn was acutely aware of his presence, the solid warmth of him at her back, his arms on either side of her as he held the reins. They rode north out of town, following a path that wound through oak and hickory trees. The day was warm but not oppressively hot, and a breeze stirred the leaves overhead. Owen pointed out things as they rode, a hawk circling overhead, wildflowers growing along the path, the tracks of deer in the soft earth. He had a way of seeing the world that made everything seem new and interesting. The spring was indeed beautiful, a clear pool fed by water bubbling up from underground. The area around it was shaded by trees, and the sound of the water was soothing. Owen helped Gwendolyn down from the horse and they sat on a flat rock near the water's edge. "This is lovely," Gwendolyn said. "Thank you for bringing me here." "I am glad you agreed to come," Owen said. He was quiet for a moment, then added, "I have been thinking about you." Gwendolyn felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Have you?" "I cannot stop thinking about what those women did to you," Owen said, his voice tight with anger. "How they treated you. It is not right. You deserve better." "The world does not always give us what we deserve," Gwendolyn said softly. "I learned that when my parents died. Good people suffer, cruel people prosper. There is no fairness to it." "Maybe not," Owen said, "but that does not mean we should accept it. We can choose to be better. We can choose to see the beauty others miss." He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made Gwendolyn's breath catch. "You are beautiful, Gwendolyn. I need you to believe that, not because I want something from you, but because it is true. Those women who mocked you, they are blind. They see only what society has told them to value, pale skin and dark hair and conventional features. They do not see the real beauty, the kind that comes from strength and character, and the courage to keep going even when the world is cruel." Tears pricked at Gwendolyn's eyes, but they were different from the tears of yesterday. These were tears of relief, of something inside her that had been locked tight beginning to open. "Why are you being so kind to me? You do not even know me." "I want to know you," Owen said. "I want to know everything about you. What makes you laugh, what you dream about, what you were like before the world tried to make you feel small." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently brushed a strand of copper hair back from her face. "I have never believed in fate, but finding you in that alley yesterday, it felt like something more than chance." "I feel it too," Gwendolyn whispered, "but I am afraid. You are leaving soon. Your life is on the trail. Even if this is real, what we feel, how can it lead anywhere?" "I do not know," Owen admitted, but I know I do not want to leave without trying to find out. Will you spend time with me while I am here? Let me court you properly." "Yes," Gwendolyn said, the word coming out without hesitation. "Yes, I would like that." Owen smiled, that transforming smile that made him even more handsome. Then, slowly, he leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle, barely more than a brush of lips, but it sent warmth flooding through Gwendolyn's entire body. When they pulled apart, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I promise I will not hurt you," he said quietly. "I promise I will not make you regret giving me this chance." They spent the rest of the afternoon by the spring, talking. Gwendolyn told him about growing up in St. Louis, about her parents and their small dressmaking business, about the sudden fever that had taken them both within a week. She told him about the loneliness of being in Eureka Springs, of feeling like an outsider in a place that should have been a refuge. Owen listened with complete attention, asking questions, making her feel heard in a way she had not felt in months. In turn, Owen told her about his childhood in Georgia, about losing his father in the war and then his mother to grief shortly after. He had an older brother who had stayed to try to rebuild the farm, but Owen had felt called to the West. He had worked cattle drives for 9 years now, saved most of his money, and was starting to think about what came next. "I am tired of always moving," he admitted. "I want to put down roots somewhere, maybe buy some land, start my own ranch. Nothing big, just enough to run a small herd and make a decent living." "That sounds wonderful," Gwendolyn said wistfully. "Having a place that is truly yours." "Maybe it could be ours," Owen said, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I apologize, that was too forward. I am moving too fast." But Gwendolyn was smiling. "Maybe moving fast is not always a bad thing. Life is short. We both know that. Why waste time pretending we do not feel what we feel?" Owen took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "What do we feel?" "I do not know what to call it yet," Gwendolyn said honestly. "But it is strong, it is real. I have never felt anything like it before." "Neither have I," Owen said. The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon when they finally rode back to town. Owen left her at the gate of the boarding house with a promise to return the next day. Gwendolyn floated through the evening chores, her mind full of the afternoon, of kisses and promises and the feeling of being seen, truly seen for the first time in her life. Over the next week, Owen came every day. Sometimes they went riding, exploring the hills and valleys around Eureka Springs. Sometimes they simply walked through town, and Gwendolyn felt her spine straighten when people stared. With Owen beside her, the whispers and stares felt less like condemnation and more like jealousy. Owen was handsome and strong and clearly educated despite his rough occupation. He treated her with respect and affection, and people noticed. Mrs. Thornhill made a pointed comment one day as they passed in the street, something about common cowpokes and loose women. Owen heard it and turned, stepping close to the older woman with a cold expression. "Madam," he said, his voice polite but edged with steel, "I suggest you keep your opinions to yourself. Miss James is a lady of quality and character, which is more than I can say for those who find pleasure in cruelty." Mrs. Thornhill had sputtered and hurried away, and Gwendolyn had felt a fierce pride in the man beside her. No one had ever defended her before. No one had ever stood up to the town's social arbiters on her behalf. But as the week drew to a close, reality began to intrude on their happiness. The cattle were rested, the supplies replenished. The trail boss was ready to move on. Owen came to the boarding house on the evening of the 7th day with a serious expression that made Gwendolyn's heart sink. They walked to the spring where they had spent their first afternoon together, and Owen helped her sit on their rock before pacing back and forth in front of her. "We are leaving tomorrow," he said finally. The herd moves out at dawn. Gwendolyn had known this was coming, but hearing it still felt like a blow. I understand. I do not want to leave you, Owen said fiercely. This week has been the best of my life. You have become so important to me, Gwendolyn. I think I am falling in love with you. I think I am falling in love with you too, Gwendolyn whispered. Owen stopped pacing and dropped to one knee in front of her. Then come with me. Gwendolyn stared at him. What? Come with me, Owen repeated. Not on the cattle drive, obviously, but to Missouri. That is where we are headed, to a ranch outside Springfield. I spoke to the ranch owner when he passed through last month to arrange the delivery. He is looking for hands, permanent positions for men who want to settle. He said if I was interested after the drive, there would be a place for me. I could work for him, save money, and eventually buy my own land in the area. Owen, I cannot just leave, Gwendolyn said, even as her heart was racing with hope. My aunt depends on me, and it would not be proper me following you to Missouri without any commitment between us. Then let there be a commitment, Owen said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver ring, simple and unadorned. It was my mother's. It is all I have left of her. Gwendolyn James, will you marry me? The world seemed to stop. Gwendolyn looked at the ring, at Owen's earnest face, at the hope and fear in his dark eyes. They had known each other only a week. It was madness. It was impossible. Yes, she said. Owen's face broke into a huge smile. He slid the ring onto her finger. It was a little loose but fit well enough, and then he pulled her off the rock and into his arms, kissing her with a passion that made her head spin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. We will do this right, he said. We will find a preacher in the morning and get married before the drive leaves. Then you can follow in the next stage to Springfield. I will write ahead to the ranch owner and arrange for a place for us to stay. By the time you arrive, everything will be ready. My aunt, Gwendolyn said. I need to tell her. I owe her that much. Of course, Owen said. We will tell her together tonight. Aunt Margaret was in the parlor when they returned, mending linens by lamplight. She looked up as they entered, her eyes moving from Gwendolyn's flushed face to Owen's protective stance beside her. Aunt Margaret, Gwendolyn said, we have something to tell you. To Gwendolyn's surprise, her aunt smiled. You are getting married. How did you know? Gwendolyn asked. I have eyes, child, Aunt Margaret said, setting down her mending. I have seen the way you two look at each other, and I know what it is like to be young and in love. Your uncle and I were married 2 weeks after we met, and we had 30 good years together before he passed. Then you do not think we are being foolish? Gwendolyn asked. I think you are being young, Aunt Margaret said, but I also think that young man there loves you truly. I have seen the way he defends you, the way he looks at you like you are the sun and moon combined. And I have seen you come alive this past week in a way you have not been since you arrived. So no, I do not think you are being foolish. I think you are being brave. Gwendolyn crossed the room and hugged her aunt tightly. Thank you for everything, for taking me in, for being kind to me. You are family, Aunt Margaret said, and you always have a home here if you need it, but I think your home now is with him. That night, Gwendolyn packed her few belongings into a trunk. She did not have much, mostly clothes she had sewn herself and a few books that had belonged to her mother. As she folded her dresses, she thought about how much her life was about to change. She was going to be married. She was going to leave the only place she had known as home for the past 3 months and travel to a new state with a man she had known for a week. It should have terrified her. But all she felt was excitement and a deep certainty that this was right. Owen was right. They were right together. The next morning before dawn, they met at the small Methodist church on the edge of town. The preacher was half asleep but willing, and Aunt Margaret and the trail boss served as witnesses. The ceremony was simple, and short. Owen repeated the vows in a strong, clear voice, never taking his eyes off Gwendolyn's face. When it came time to kiss the bride, he cupped her face gently and kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "Mrs. Young," he whispered against her lips. "Mrs. Young," Gwendolyn repeated, trying out the sound of it. Outside the church, the sky was just beginning to lighten with the first hint of dawn. Owen pulled her close, and they stood together watching the sunrise, the sky turning gold and copper and flame. "See," Owen said softly, "just like you." Gwendolyn leaned back against him, feeling the solid strength of his body, the steady beat of his heart. She was married. She was loved. She was seen for who she truly was, and she was cherished for it. Owen had to leave with the drive, but he promised to write and to have everything ready for her arrival in Springfield. Gwendolyn watched him ride away with the herd, her heart aching even as it was full. Aunt Margaret put a hand on her shoulder. "Come inside," she said. "We have a lot to do to get you ready for your journey." The stage to Springfield left 3 days later. Gwendolyn said goodbye to her aunt with tears in her eyes and promises to write often. The journey took 2 days, the stage rattling over rough roads through beautiful country. Gwendolyn spent the time imagining her new life, wondering what the ranch would be like, whether Owen had arrived safely with the herd. When the stage pulled into Springfield, Gwendolyn's heart was pounding. She stepped down onto the dusty street, looking around nervously. Then she saw him, pushing through the small crowd at the stage station, his face breaking into a huge smile when he spotted her. "Gwendolyn!" Owen swept her up in his arms, lifting her off the ground and spinning her around. "You are here. You are really here." "I am here," Gwendolyn laughed, holding tight to his shoulders. "I told you I would come." Owen set her down but kept his arms around her. "I have everything ready. I found us a small cabin on the ranch property. It is not much yet, but it is clean and sound. The ranch owner, Mr. Patterson, he and his wife are good people. They are looking forward to meeting you." The ranch was 5 miles outside Springfield, a sprawling operation with hundreds of head of cattle and a large main house surrounded by outbuildings and cabins for the workers. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson were indeed welcoming, a couple in their 50s who had built the ranch from nothing over the past 20 years. Mrs. Patterson took an immediate liking to Gwendolyn and showed her around the property while Owen got her trunk settled in the cabin. The cabin was small, just 2 rooms, but it was theirs. Owen had scrubbed it clean and even picked wildflowers that stood in a jar on the rough wooden table. Gwendolyn touched the flowers, feeling tears prick her eyes. "It is perfect," she said. That night, alone together for the first time as husband and wife, Owen was gentle and patient. He undid her hair, running his fingers through the copper waves, whispering about how beautiful she was. They learned each other slowly, with tenderness and growing passion. Afterwards, lying tangled together in the narrow bed, Gwendolyn felt completely at peace. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," Owen replied, kissing her forehead. "I am going to make you happy, Gwendolyn, I promise." The next weeks and months proved him right. Owen worked hard on the ranch, earning the respect of the other hands and of Mr. Patterson himself. Gwendolyn found work helping Mrs. Patterson with the cooking for the ranch hands, and occasionally doing mending and sewing for the other families on the property. The money was not much, but combined with Owen's wages, they were able to save. More importantly, Gwendolyn was happy. The other ranch families accepted her without question. Some of the women commented on her beautiful red hair, asking if she had Irish ancestry and sharing their own family histories. The children on the ranch followed her around like puppies, and she told them stories and taught them simple songs. No one mocked her freckles. No one made her feel less than. "You are glowing," Mrs. Patterson said one morning about 3 months after Gwendolyn's arrival. "Marriage agrees with you." "It does," Gwendolyn admitted. "I never thought I could be this happy." That evening, Owen came home from working with the cattle to find Gwendolyn sitting on the steps of the cabin, a strange expression on her face. "What is wrong?" he asked immediately, dropping to his knees in front of her. "Nothing is wrong," Gwendolyn said. "At least, I do not think so." "Owen, I think I am with child." Owen's eyes went wide. "Truly, I am fairly certain," Gwendolyn said. "All the signs are there. I wanted to be sure before I said anything, but Mrs. Patterson noticed today and confirmed my suspicions." "A baby," Owen breathed. Then he let out a whoop of joy and pulled Gwendolyn into his arms. "We are going to have a baby. You are happy?" Gwendolyn asked. "Happy?" Owen pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining. "Gwendolyn, I am beyond happy. I am overjoyed. We are going to be a family." They told the Pattersons at dinner that night, and Mrs. Patterson immediately began fussing over Gwendolyn, insisting she not work too hard and making plans for baby clothes and supplies. Mr. Patterson pulled Owen aside and offered him a raise and a larger cabin, one that would be better for a family. "You are a good worker, Owen," Mr. Patterson said, "and I like you and your wife. I want you to feel like this ranch is your home." As Gwendolyn's pregnancy progressed, Owen became even more attentive and protective. He insisted she rest whenever possible, and in the evenings he would rub her swollen feet and talk to her belly, telling their unborn child stories about the cattle drives and the wide open spaces of the West. Gwendolyn would run her fingers through his hair and think about how lucky she was, how different her life might have been if she had not stumbled into that alley in Eureka Springs. The baby came in early spring, after a long and difficult labor. Mrs. Patterson and another ranch wife stayed with Gwendolyn through it all, while Owen paced outside the cabin wearing a path in the grass. When the baby's first cry rang out, Owen burst through the door, his face wild with worry. "Gwendolyn, she is fine," Mrs. Patterson said, smiling. "And you have a son." Owen crossed to the bed where Gwendolyn lay exhausted but smiling, a tiny bundle in her arms. "A son," he whispered, staring down at the baby in wonder. The infant had a shock of dark hair and was wailing lustily, his face red with effort. "He has your hair," Gwendolyn said softly, "but I think he has my temper." Owen laughed and carefully sat on the edge of the bed. Gwendolyn placed the baby in his arms, and Owen looked down at his son with an expression of such love and wonder that it made Gwendolyn's heart ache in the best way. "Hello, little one," Owen said. "I am your father, and that beautiful woman there is your mother. We are going to take such good care of you." They named him Thomas after Owen's father. Thomas Young was a healthy, hungry baby who kept them up at night but filled their days with joy. Owen was a devoted father, coming home from work each day eager to hold his son and help with his care. He sang to Thomas the old ballads his mother had taught him and told him stories about the ranch and the cattle. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Owen began to talk more seriously about buying their own land. He had been saving carefully, and Mr. Patterson had given him several bonuses over the years. There was a property about 10 miles from the ranch, 100 acres with a creek running through it and good grazing land. The owner was an older man looking to sell and move back east to be with his daughter. "We could do it," Owen said one evening, going over the figures with Gwendolyn. "We have enough for the down payment. I could still work for Mr. Patterson part-time while we build up our own herd. In a few years, we could be completely self-sufficient." "Let us do it," Gwendolyn said. She trusted Owen completely, trusted his judgment and his dreams. They bought the land in the summer of 1881, 3 years after they had met. The property had a small, run-down house that needed extensive repairs, but Owen and some of the other ranch hands worked on it during their free time. They fixed the roof, replaced rotten floorboards, built new shutters for the windows. Gwendolyn sewed curtains and helped paint the walls. Slowly, the house became a home. They moved onto their own property in the fall, bringing with them a small herd of cattle that Mr. Patterson had sold them at a fair price. Thomas, now 2 years old, toddled around the new house exploring everything, and Gwendolyn found herself pregnant again. This time, she felt more confident, more prepared. She knew what to expect, and she had Owen by her side. Their second child, a daughter, was born the following spring. She came into the world quietly, with barely a whimper, and when the midwife placed her in Gwendolyn's arms, Gwendolyn gasped. The baby had bright copper-red hair, unmistakably inherited from her mother. Owen was in the room this time, having refused to leave Gwendolyn's side. He looked at his daughter and then at Gwendolyn, his eyes full of emotion. "She looks just like you," he said softly. "She is going to be as beautiful as her mother." They named her Rose, for the color of her hair and for the wild roses that grew along the creek on their property. As Rose grew, it became clear she had not only inherited Gwendolyn's red hair, but also her freckles. By the time she was a toddler, her nose and cheeks were sprinkled with them. Gwendolyn watched her daughter carefully, worried about how the world might treat her. But Owen made sure Rose knew from the beginning that she was beautiful. He called her his little sunrise, his rose of the prairie, his freckled princess. Thomas, a protective older brother, would fight any child who dared say anything mean about his sister's appearance. The ranch prospered. Owen proved to have a natural talent for breeding and raising cattle, and their herd grew steadily. They hired a young man to help with the work, and Gwendolyn sold eggs and butter in town for extra income. Life was hard, the work never ending, but they were happy. One evening, when Rose was 4 and Thomas was 6, Gwendolyn stood in the doorway of their house watching Owen play with the children in the yard. He was chasing them around, making them shriek with laughter, his face alight with joy. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and copper, and Gwendolyn thought about that day in the alley, when she had been at her lowest point, and Owen had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to pray. Owen caught her watching and came over, leaving the children to play. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How lucky I am," Gwendolyn said. "How different my life could have been." "Our lives could have been," Owen corrected. "I was just drifting before I met you, Gwendolyn, moving from place to place with no real purpose. You gave me a reason to stop, to build something, to put down roots. You gave me a home." "You gave me a home too," Gwendolyn said, turning in his arms to face him. "You gave me love and acceptance and the courage to see myself the way you see me. You changed my life, Owen Young. You changed mine, Mrs. Young," Owen said, and kissed her as the sun set behind them, their children playing in the yard, their cattle grazing in the fields, their home standing solid and sure on land that was theirs. 2 more children followed over the next years, another son they named Samuel and a daughter named Grace. The house had to be expanded to accommodate the growing family, and Owen built additional rooms with his own hands, working late into the evenings by lamplight. The children grew tall and strong, helping with the ranch work as soon as they were old enough. Thomas showed an aptitude for working with horses and began training them for sale, adding another income stream to the ranch. Rose, her mother's daughter, had a talent for sewing and began making dresses and shirts that were sought after by families in town. Samuel was quiet and thoughtful, preferring to spend his time reading when he could, though he never shirked his work. Grace, the baby, was fearless and determined, insisting on doing everything her older siblings did. Gwendolyn watched her children grow with pride and amazement. All of them had inherited some combination of her and Owen's features. Rose and Samuel had red hair. Thomas and Grace had dark hair like Owen. But more importantly, all of them were confident and secure in themselves, raised in a home full of love where their unique qualities were celebrated rather than mocked. The years passed in a rhythm of hard work and simple pleasures. Winters were spent mostly indoors, Gwendolyn teaching the children their letters and numbers while Owen maintained the equipment and buildings. Springs meant calving season and planting a vegetable garden. Summers were for growing and tending the herd. Autumns brought the harvest and preparations for winter. Through it all, Owen and Gwendolyn's love only deepened. They had their disagreements, as any couple does, but they always worked through them with honesty and respect. Owen never once raised his voice to her or made her feel small. Gwendolyn supported Owen's decisions about the ranch and offered her own insights that he valued and respected. When Thomas was 18, he announced he wanted to buy his own land and start his own ranch. Owen, remembering how Mr. Patterson had helped him get started, gave Thomas a portion of their herd as a wedding present when he married a sweet girl from town named Elizabeth. Rose married at 20 to a young man who worked as a carpenter in Springfield. They built a house in town, and Rose opened a dressmaking shop that became very successful. Samuel surprised everyone by deciding to become a teacher. He went to a college in Kansas City and returned 2 years later with a degree and a position at the school in Springfield. He married a fellow teacher, a sharp-witted woman named Catherine, and they had 3 children who visited the ranch often. Grace, true to her fearless nature, refused all suitors until she was 25, when she finally agreed to marry a ranch hand who had worked for Owen for several years and had patiently courted her for 2 years. As Gwendolyn and Owen grew older, their hair graying and their movements slower, they began to step back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch. Thomas took over most of the management, while they enjoyed their grandchildren and the fruits of their decades of labor. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching yet another sunset, Gwendolyn took Owen's hand. His hands were gnarled with age now, scarred and calloused from a lifetime of hard work, but they were still the strong, gentle hands that had helped her out of that alley so many years ago. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. Stopping in Eureka Springs that day, giving up the freedom of the trail for this life, Owen looked at her, his dark eyes still sharp despite his age. "Gwendolyn, I have never regretted a single moment. You and the children, this ranch, this life we have built together, it is everything I never knew I needed. You are everything I never knew I needed." "I love you," Gwendolyn said. "I have loved you since that first day when you told me I looked like sunrise." "You still do," Owen said. "Every morning when I wake up next to you, it is like watching the sun rise. You are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to copper to deep purple. In the distance, they could hear their grandchildren playing, Thomas's children who lived in the small house that had been built near the main house. The cattle were lowing in the fields, settling down for the night. Somewhere in the house, Grace was cooking dinner, the smell of beef stew wafting through the windows. It was an ordinary evening, the kind they had experienced thousands of times over their decades together. But it was also extraordinary because they were together, because they had built this life from nothing but love and determination, and a chance encounter in an alley. Gwendolyn thought about the girl she had been, crying in that alley in Eureka Springs, convinced she was ugly and unlovable. She thought about how close she had come to believing the cruel words of people who did not matter. If Owen had not come along when he did, if he had not seen her truly and helped her see herself differently, her life might have been so much smaller, so much lonelier. But he had come along. He had seen her. He had loved her. And she had been brave enough to believe him and to take the chance on a love that seemed impossible. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, echoing that question he had asked so many times over the years. "I am thinking about how grateful I am," Gwendolyn said, "for everything. For you, for our children, for this life. For that day in Eureka Springs when everything changed." "The day I met Sunrise," Owen said softly. They sat together as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. The years ahead would bring more challenges, more joys, more sorrows. But they would face them together, as they always had, bound by a love that had started with a simple act of kindness and had grown into something that would last the rest of their lives. Years continued to pass, and Owen and Gwendolyn watched their family grow and flourish. Their grandchildren had children of their own, and the ranch that had started as a humble 100 acres had expanded to several hundred, with Thomas and his sons managing the operations expertly. The Young name became well respected throughout Missouri, known for quality cattle and honest dealing. When Owen was 72, he fell ill with a fever. Gwendolyn, now 69, tended to him with the same devotion he had always shown her. The doctor from Springfield came and did what he could, but Owen's body was worn out from a lifetime of hard work. The family gathered, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren filling the house, saying their goodbyes. On his last day, Owen asked for a few moments alone with Gwendolyn. She sat beside his bed, holding his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Do not cry, my love," Owen said, his voice weak but still tender. "We have had a wonderful life together. No regrets, remember, no regrets," Gwendolyn whispered. "But I do not know how to be without you." "You will never be without me," Owen said. "I will be in every sunrise you see, in the red hair of our grandchildren, in this ranch we built together. I will always be with you, Gwendolyn." "I love you," Gwendolyn said. "I have loved you every day since you told me I looked like sunrise. And I have loved you every day since I first saw you in that alley," Owen said. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for taking a chance on a wandering cowboy who did not know what he was looking for until he found you." He closed his eyes then, a peaceful expression on his face, and slipped away with Gwendolyn holding his hand. The funeral was attended by half the county. So many lives had been touched by Owen's kindness and integrity. Thomas gave the eulogy, speaking of his father's strength and gentleness, his devotion to his family, his unwavering love for his wife. Rose read a poem she had written. Samuel talked about the lessons his father had taught him about honor and hard work. Gwendolyn stood at the graveside, surrounded by her children and their families, and watched as Owen was laid to rest on a hill overlooking the ranch. The grave was positioned to face east, so that every sunrise would illuminate the stone. In the months that followed, Gwendolyn grieved deeply. She had lost the love of her life, her partner of 50 years. But she was not alone. Her children took turns staying with her, making sure she ate and rested. Her grandchildren visited constantly, filling the house with noise and life. And she had her memories, decades of them, each one precious. She took to sitting on the porch every morning, watching the sunrise. True to Owen's words, she felt his presence in those moments, in the gold and copper light that painted the sky. She would touch the silver ring on her finger, worn smooth by the years, and remember the young cowboy who had seen beauty where others saw only flaws. Gwendolyn lived for another 12 years, long enough to see all her grandchildren grown and many of her great-grandchildren born. She died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 81 and was buried beside Owen on the hill overlooking the ranch. At her funeral, Rose stood up to speak. She was 60 years old now, her own red hair streaked with gray, but she stood tall and proud as she addressed the gathered crowd. "My mother was the strongest person I ever knew," Rose said. "She faced cruelty and prejudice in her youth, but she never let it break her. She chose love over bitterness. She chose hope over despair. And she taught all of us, her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, that our worth is not determined by what others think of us, but by the content of our character and the love in our hearts." Rose paused, looking at the crowd. "My father used to tell my mother she looked like sunrise. As a child, I did not fully understand what he meant, but now I do. My mother was like the sun rising, bringing light to the darkness, warmth to the cold. She made everything better by being in it. And that legacy, that light, lives on in all of us." The Young family continued to prosper for generations. The ranch remained in the family, passed down from Thomas to his children and their children. The story of Owen and Gwendolyn became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. Young brides wore Gwendolyn's silver ring on their wedding day for luck. Children with red hair were told they were blessed with the sunrise gift. The house where Owen and Gwendolyn had raised their family was preserved and maintained, becoming a gathering place for family reunions and holidays. On the mantel over the fireplace sat a photograph, one of the first taken in Springfield, showing Owen and Gwendolyn in their middle years. Owen was seated with Gwendolyn standing beside him, his arm around her waist. Both were looking at the camera with small smiles, and even in the sepia tones of the old photograph, the love between them was evident. Beside the photograph was a framed piece of paper with writing in Owen's hand. It was a poem he had written for Gwendolyn on their 25th wedding anniversary, and it had become a treasured family heirloom. The poem read, "She came to me like sunrise, bright and fair, with copper in her hair and gold upon her face. The world had called her flawed, had made her think herself unworthy of love and grace. But I saw truth where others saw only shame. I saw the beauty of the dawn in every freckle, every flame of red that crowned her head. She was not broken, not less than, but more, so much more than any words could say. And when she took my hand and said, 'I will,' my wandering ceased, my searching ended. I had found my home, my heart, my sunrise. Every morning since has been a gift, every day a blessing. To love and be loved by her has been the greatest honor of my life." The Young family ranch stood for over 100 years, a testament to the love between a cowboy and a woman who had been mocked for her freckles and red hair. The house eventually became a historical site, preserved as an example of late 19th century ranch life in Missouri. School children took field trips there, learning about the early settlers and the building of the West. But more than that, they learned about Owen and Gwendolyn. They heard the story of how a chance encounter in an alley in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, had led to a love that changed not just 2 lives but generations of lives. They heard about the cowboy who had seen beauty where others saw only flaws, and the woman who had been brave enough to believe him. And every morning, as the sun rose over the Missouri hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and copper and flame, the story lived on. The story of how one act of kindness, one moment of truly seeing another person can change everything. The story of how love, real love, sees beyond the surface to the soul beneath. The story of Owen and Gwendolyn Young, the cowboy and his sunrise. Their legacy was not just the ranch or the family they had built, but the lesson they had taught through their lives and their love. That true beauty is not found in conforming to society's narrow standards, but in the courage to be oneself and the grace to see others truly. That cruelty says more about the cruel than about their victims. That love, when it is real and true, can overcome any obstacle and heal any wound. The descendants of Owen and Gwendolyn Young carried those lessons forward into their own lives. They raised their children to look beyond surface appearances, to value character over beauty, kindness over conformity. When they encountered cruelty, they remembered Gwendolyn's strength. When they faced difficult choices, they remembered Owen's integrity. And when they felt lost or alone, they remembered that somewhere, somehow, there was someone who would see them truly and love them completely. The sun continued to rise over the ranch, day after day, year after year, decade after decade. And in that sunrise, in the gold and copper light that painted the sky each dawn, the love of Owen and Gwendolyn Young lived on, eternal and unchanging, a reminder that true beauty, true love, is something that transcends time and space and even death itself. Their story became more than just a family legend. It was written down, preserved in letters and journals, and the memories passed from generation to generation. Local historians included it in books about the settlement of Missouri. A novelist, descended from the Young family, wrote a fictionalized version that became a regional bestseller. But no fictional account could quite capture the truth of it, the reality of two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment and had built something that would last forever. On the hill overlooking the ranch, the graves of Owen and Gwendolyn Young stood side by side, the headstones weathered by time but still readable. Visitors came sometimes, drawn by the story, and they would stand there at sunset or sunrise, looking out over the land that Owen and Gwendolyn had worked so hard to tame and cultivate. They would read the inscriptions on the stones. Owen's read, "Beloved husband, father, and grandfather." He saw beauty where others saw only flaws. 1852, 1924. Gwendolyn's read, "Beloved wife, mother, and grandmother." She was his sunrise. 1857, 1936. And between the two stones, planted by Rose and tended by generations of the family after her, grew a wild rose bush. Every spring it bloomed in profusion, the flowers a deep, rich red, like copper catching the light of the rising sun. The roses became another part of the legend, said to bloom more beautifully than any other roses in Missouri, nourished by the love of the two people buried beneath them. The story of Owen and Gwendolyn Young reminded everyone who heard it that love is not about perfection. It is about seeing someone completely, flaws and all, and choosing to love them anyway. It is about being seen and accepted and cherished for who you truly are. It is about two imperfect people building a perfect life together, one day at a time, one sunrise at a time. And so the story ends, not with an ending, but with a continuation. Because love, like Owen and Gwendolyn's, does not end. It ripples outward, touching lives and changing hearts, generation after generation. It lives on in the laughter of children, in the clasped hands of couples, in every act of kindness and acceptance and grace. It lives on in every sunrise, gold and copper and flame, painting the sky with beauty that cannot be denied or diminished or destroyed. It lives on in the knowledge that somewhere out there, for everyone who has ever felt unworthy or unlovable, there is someone who will look at them and see not flaws but beauty. Someone who will say in their own way, "You look like sunrise." And that is how two people who met by chance in an alley in Eureka Springs, Arkansas in the summer of 1878 changed the world. Not through great deeds or famous accomplishments, but through the simple, profound act of loving each other truly and completely. and building a life together that stood as a testament to what love can do when it is real and right, and given the chance to grow. Their story is over, but their legacy endures. In the ranch that still stands, in the family that still gathers, in the sunrise that still paints the Missouri sky in shades of gold and copper every morning. In the hearts of everyone who hears their story and believes, even for a moment, that they too are worthy of being loved exactly as they are. The end of their story is really just the beginning of countless other stories, inspired by their example, built on the foundation they laid. Stories of people finding courage, finding love, finding themselves. Stories of sunrises and second chances and the transformative power of being truly seen. Owen and Gwendolyn Young lived, loved, and left a legacy that will never fade. And every morning somewhere, someone watches the sunrise and thinks of them, and believes in the possibility of love that sees beyond the surface to the soul beneath. That is their gift to the world, and it is eternal.